Artyom shivered once, twice, and then was still. The winds from outside rushed into the narrow corridor, slipping between his thinly gloved fingers. But he could feel his body slowly growing resistant to the chill. It bites into you, he thought. The cold bites hard, like the jaws of a vicious dog with the obsessive drive to not let go. They hadn't been outside in so long, and yet Artyom still cursed the temperature. It was never warm. The longer he left this door open, the colder it would get inside. So he stepped out into the frigid air and took a deep breath. His throat, sore from yesterday, stung as he breathed in, then out. It was never warm because it was always so cold. "The weather's really nice," he lied, looking over his shoulder as two small faces leaned out from behind the door. His niece was the first to brave the weather. Natasha took a careful step, feeling the crunch of snow under her boots. Artyom had made sure she was wearing both her faded purple coat and the jumper they had found yesterday. It had some holes in it, but even the smallest amount of shielding from the cold was valuable. She looked up at her uncle and smiled. "Where are we going today?" Natasha asked. Artyom's son, seeing that both Natasha and his father had gone outside, ran outside and plunged his chubby fists into the snow, chortling happily. Artyom laughed, lifting him up and placing him on his shoulders. "We're going to the Kavesh Park. At this time of year, the lake freezes over. It's beautiful." And for a brief moment, the winds could be heard whistling in affirmation. Artyom closed the door. They were now outside. They walked as a group, tracking dirty prints through the snow. The walk took no longer than an hour, passing by empty streets and abandoned homes till the urban landscape broke into free country. Artyom was right. It was beautiful. Natasha was the first to run up to the icy plain and test it with the heel of her shoes. Artyom lifted Dmitri off his shoulders and placed him down. Without hesitation, Dmitri began to investigate just how much snow he could fit into his mouth. The lake was half reflective, projecting a reversed image of the surrounding forest. It felt like looking through a window into a dream. Natasha began to walk all over the ice, struggling to keep her balance. Dmitri watched her in awe before hobbling over to join in. Artyom was not watching either of them. His gaze scanned over the world around him. The pine trees were coated with a thin layer of snow, and patches of petrified grass were frozen solid. The earth was hard like iron, beneath a light dusting of white. The snow reminded Artyom of the rat poison they had at home, a beautiful, deceptive white. It was then they heard a sound behind him, a low rumbling, not quite a car, but more rhythmical. There was an underlying beat. He turned around to see an armoured vehicle passing along the outskirts of the clearing. Between the trees, he could see soldiers marching alongside it. Artyom caught a glimpse of a searing red star printed on the side of the metal hulk, and the hard-set faces of the soldiers. Their look of fatigue was difficult to hide. The procession quickly passed deeper into the forest, and Artyom looked away, trying to forget their cold expressions, far colder and unimaginably harder than the land they stood on. And as quickly as they had arrived, they were gone. The children had somehow missed the whole thing, entirely focused on their crude snowman which they had begun to construct. Artyom smiled, and then crouched down to join in. Hours dripped by. They spent most of the day enjoying the icy sun. They walked across the glossy lake and back. Artyom was even able to forget the cold, till the sun began to sink over the distant hill, and they retired to the lakeside spot where their day had begun. Artyom spied the tracks of the convoy, which were still etched into the snowy earth. The air smelt dry and electric. As they were preparing to leave, Dmitri once again on his father's shoulders and Natasha's hand in Artyom's own, the ground began to shake. There was a rumble in the distance, like a great thunderstorm. Natasha covered her ears. Behind them, a large crackling sound could be heard, and they turned to see the lake where they had once stood begin to fragment shards violently protruding upwards from its once smooth surface. Artyom wobbled, almost losing his balance. Natasha clung to his trouser leg, trying not to fall. The shaking subsided after a few moments, and the grounds became morbidly still. The winds quickly rushed to fill the silence, echoing through the trees like ghosts. Artyom looked down at Natasha. She looked up, her eyes wide, her young face half concealed by the hood of her faded purple coat. "What was that, uncle?" Artyom looked into her eyes. She looked like a small flower bud, pushing up through the snow. Natasha looked up pleadingly, and Artyom felt something waver inside him. Now he was painfully aware of the cold. He shivered. She should be protected from the truth. Now was not the time. He replied, softly and carefully. "It was nothing, Natasha." Natasha continued to look around her, nodding slowly. The snow had been shaken off the trees, and now sat in mounds at the base of the trunks. The landscape pressed all around them, trees leaning in like sentinels. The cold bit into all of them, and Artyom shivered again. And as the winds howled all around them, all Artyom could think about was the future.